The Sweet Sound of Success show is brought to you by the Mentor Studio. The Mentor Studio is an exclusive mentoring and training program for social influencers, business owners, entrepreneurs, coaches, and startups, bringing personal development to the underserved around the world. And brought to you by Success Strategists. Simple strategies that work to develop your business with flow and ease using proven strategies and the right tactics. This is the Sweet Sound of Success with Sue Wilhite, Success Attraction Expert. Elinor Stutz broke through barriers long before doing so was popular. Against all odds, she defied the theme "Women Can't Sell" to become the top producer at every company she ever worked, all while ignoring attempts to get her to quit. 11 years later, she found herself motionless on a stretcher with an irreparable broken neck. See how she overcame that, as well as all the other big, hairy monsters, to become the CEO of Smooth Sail and the founder of the motto, Believe, Become, and Empower. Please welcome my friend, Elinor Stutz.
Thank you, Sue. I love your enthusiasm.
Well, you're worth getting enthusiastic over. When we met, I'm not going to say in what year, let's just say it was a number of years ago. And by gosh and by golly, you were inspirational then, you're inspirational now. And I can't believe it took me so long to get you on my show.
I thought it was new.
Well, it is new. So here we go. So for those of you who haven't encountered my show and think it's new, the way that this works is the subtitle is The Hero's Journey for the Entrepreneur's Soul. And what we do is we talk about the entrepreneurial journey as a story, because we are all heroes of our own story. And what we talk about are just 5 pieces of Joseph Campbell's wonderful cycle of the hero's journey. And those 5 pieces are the ordinary beginning, which I always laugh at because nobody has an ordinary beginning. And then there's the call to action, what brought Elinor into her entrepreneurial spirit. The big hairy monsters, which sometimes ends up being part of the call to action, kind of comes before, kind of comes during, kind of comes after. Big hairy monsters, they're there for us to dance with. And then 2 pieces that I think are really important for the entrepreneurial journey. And one of them is the biggest myth that I want to bust. And that is the entrepreneur doing it all by themselves. And sometimes that happens for a little while, but nobody goes very far without help. And so there's the allies, the mentors, the coaches, the guides, the wizards, the folks that lift your wings. And I love to talk about those. And then finally, one of the things that I just think is one of the fun parts of the entrepreneurial journey is, how do the folks at home take this? Sometimes the folks in our lives don't always get it about what we're doing. And sometimes they do. And there's this whole fun range of how that works. So, Elinor, what was your ordinary beginning?
My ordinary beginning was my husband coming home one night and saying to me as he was facing my back as I was typing on the computer, "I know what you should do for a living. You have the personality of a salesperson." I got up, looked him in the eye, and I asked very quietly, "Is that a compliment or an insult?" But boy, was he right. Now, how often do you hear that?
Good for him. And good for him.
Boy, it was an awful journey. That's all I can tell you. They did not want a female on any of the sales teams, and the treatment was dreadful.
Oh, I bet. The sexism for females, it was thought that women couldn't sell, that we were too soft.
Yeah. So I fooled them.
Right. So that's kind of your call to action rolled in there.
Yeah.
So can you give us some juicy examples of the things that you had to overcome, the big hairy monsters, which in this case might actually be big and hairy?
Yeah, so my first job is the best example. You don't let anybody stop you. So they figured I was just another stupid female bound to fail. Why bother spending money on training me? So the men were handed scripts. I knew nothing about the business equipment I was to sell. They were giant copiers of the day, and I'm not technical, I'm creative. So there was a whole upset there for me. And I was told, good luck. I had to ask the secretary how to do my job. And in those days, you cold called, so you knocked on doors in your territory. And not knowing how to sell or anything about what I was selling, I made friends with everyone I encountered. And those friends, such as guards with guns and receptionists, invited me in or told me who to meet with, and I did. And not knowing anything about sales, I started sharing stories, and I asked them how they got their job and what if they liked their career and what advice they might give so I could pass it along. Pretty soon we were enjoying laughter, and they kept inviting me back and back and back. And the CEO of each company finally said, you have to buy from her or you're wasting valuable company time, and I'm going to fire you. So by the fourth month, I was the top representative, not knowing a thing about what I was selling. Honest to goodness. And then the games got uglier.
Right, right. Because now they're like, what was that?
Embarrassed.
Yeah. So that was, you kind of invented relationship selling all by yourself.
I did. Without
knowing that that's what you were doing. How cool.
Yeah. May I just give a little plug since you mentioned that?
Sure.
My book instantly became an international bestseller. And over time, men started to read it because they thought maybe they were missing something. And it's now evergreen. It's among the classics.
Right. The nice girls do get the sale. Yes. I have it. I love it. I read it. I use it. You got it.
It's a corporate tell-all.
Yes. Yes. Who knew? Yeah. So you literally wrote the book on relationship selling.
I did. And I'll tell you, you were talking about the hairy thing in the room. We met in California, and then we moved further north, and I went to an event, 200 people in the room. We each had turns to go on stage to announce what we did. And I announced foolishly, I'm a sales trainer. Well, 200 people burst out into laughter at me, thinking, how could I possibly know enough about sales to train? So someone kindly came up to me afterward and said, Elinor, to establish credibility, you have to write a book. So it's out of these disasters that good things come about.
Right, right, exactly. Yes, and you know, that's one of the key points about resiliency as an entrepreneur is when you fail, you go, wow, okay, now what?
Exactly. What can I learn from this?
Yeah. What do I get from this? Now what do I do? One of my mentors says, so they said no. Next question, now what? Who's next? So yeah, perfect. talk a little bit. We've done the ordinary beginning and the call to action and the big hairy monsters which were absolutely delightful. Talk about some of the people who actually supported you. You know, you ran into
What?
rampant sexism. And
Somebody supported me?
Yes.
You gotta be kidding.
Did you have any allies?
The one person that I attribute my success to, and she says I'm far too kind, is Randy Pizer. I believe you probably know her.
Yes, Randy.
She's the one who got me published. I think I was her first client. I didn't know her from Adam, but I hired her on the spot after being given the advice to publish a book. And then after the fact, after it's published, guess what my friend said? It's a stupid little book.
Oh.
And you should quit sales and you have no business being an entrepreneur. That's for men. That's what my friend said. So that's why I said, what support? You know, joking, but.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been on my own. My saving grace. First of all, I have to tell you, as a child, every night at the dinner table, I kept hearing my dad say every night, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, never give up. So when that happened, social media was announced years later. I was the first one to jump onto a group to learn how to use it. And that was my saving grace all these years.
Right. And before this interview, you were talking about how both of us had been online and doing Zoom and doing all of these things in that world before the pandemic showed up.
Right.
Right. And getting ahead of the curve. And
exactly. Everybody laughed at me. Social media never take off. I said, okay, suit yourself. I'm happy because I'm meeting the people I want to connect with. Exactly. That was the differentiator, not the people you're stuck with, not the people you're living next to, but the people you choose to connect with. That's a whole new ballgame.
Right. Yes. And it is the people you choose to connect with that are really the people that you hang out with, right?
Yeah.
That actually do you good in the world, because they're the ones, whether they're clients or whether they're friends or whether they're allies, you choose them.
Exactly. And I've met the most remarkable people. I've never been happier.
Exactly, right? So talk about your other book a little bit. You've got your second book, Hired, there in your background.
I do. So, as I mentioned earlier, when I went on sales calls and didn't know what I was supposed to say, I used to ask people how they got their job and, you know, advice they give. So over time, well, let me go back. My thanks for being the top producer at each company, 11 different companies, was the end of the year to have my hard-earned accounts given to the men and my quota tripled. So there was no point sticking around. So I became an expert at interviewing.
Right.
And you had mentioned in my bio, thank you, that I'm one who overcame an irreparable broken neck. My scar's here and I'm very proud of it. So that too, I had to sell myself to the surgeon. I had a near-death experience is what happened, and that completely changed my life. In fact, in many ways, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, as weird as this sounds. 2 visions came to me. The first in the vision of being a speaker, and that's what I always wanted to do. I had taken a couple of public speaking classes and loved it. And I said, yes, I'm going to do that. And that vision faded. A brilliant gold light came over me, and the second vision appeared, and it was my life report card. The left-hand side, high life marks. The right-hand side, a deep embarrassment. It was entitled Community Service, and it was completely blank. So in the moment, I promised to the great beyond and myself that I will start doing whatever I could to begin helping communities, however that may look. The gold light blinked, which gave me indication that I got agreement. Don't ask why, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And the light slowly dissipated. And then all kinds of things happened that night. I won't go into it, but it's an inspirational talk. Les Brown heard it, tweaked it, and it received standing ovations every time. So fast forward with everything that happened the next morning, heavily medicated. I'm told I'll have 2 minutes to meet the surgeon. I'm expecting words of encouragement after what happened that night. Instead, I hear the surgeon say, Mrs. Stutz, when you wake up, most likely you will be paralyzed. And I'm a salesperson. I hear the undertone and the meaning of words people use.
Right.
And I copy words. So with every ounce of energy back in my body, I said, doctor, when I wake up, I fully expect to be well. The last thing I remember was some jumping backwards just before surgery. Who in their right mind would do that? At any rate, 4 hours later, he's standing over me and he's saying, there's no rhyme or reason for what happened. You're a walking miracle and you will walk out of this hospital on your own in 4 days. And during those 4 days, the staff on duty came to visit me and kept calling me a walking miracle. I had no clue what they were talking about. It took me years to sort it all out.
Wow.
But I'm thankful. I've had about 15 extra years since then.
Wow.
Actually, closer to 20 years. So if I had accepted it,
right,
all these accomplishments would never have come to be. So that's why the motto, believe, become, empower. Believe you can do it, become that person, and empower others to do the same. So back to your question, sorry about the long explanation. I began teaching job seekers how to sell themselves on interviews. And there were so many thank you notes for helping them get the job that they wanted. After the market fell in 2008, I wrote the book, Hired, How to Use Sales Techniques to Sell Yourself on Interviews.
Nice. Very good. And that is also an excellent book, by the way.
Thank you.
It is, technically this is for entrepreneurs, but sometimes entrepreneurs have family members who are not entrepreneurs, and you got to get it out there.
Oh, yeah.
Hustle.
Even if you want somebody to go to dinner with you or to a movie when you could go back to movies, you have to sell the idea.
Yes.
Why will they want to say yes? And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. So get the books, get Elinor's books. They're absolutely fabulous. No, really.
Thank you.
They are extremely well written, very understandable, not boring. Those are my key markers for nonfiction business books.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Those are the things. So Elinor, I believe that you mentioned that you've got something really cool to offer to our viewers and listeners.
Yes. Going back to that episode where 200 people laughed at me, I went back to the same event a few months later, and everybody, one by one, everyone said, oh my God, you're advancing your business at lightning speed, followed by, how did you do it? So I thought about my procedures in the sales environment and how I was always the top producer, and I wrote it all out. But in clear, concise instruction, it's called Laser Goal Setting System. It's a PDF. And it's a real postcard too, but I'd be happy to send the PDF to anybody who's interested, who wants to put their business on fast forward.
And we will have links right here for you. And you know what? It occurred to me when I was asking that I've given the dessert course before we actually finished the meal. Your husband obviously saw something in you that was brilliant. That was your sales personality. Was there anybody else who saw you as an entrepreneur, or didn't, for that matter?
No. He knows me well, and I know him well. Everybody told me I had no business in sales, no business being an entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, but I have to tell you, we were talking about being online and community service. It advanced. The pandemic brought about my connecting with someone who he was putting out the nicest tweets, a white gentleman. And I wanted to get to know why he's putting out these nice tweets. Well, it turns out he's connected with Inclusion Allies Coalition, devoted to diversity, equity, and inclusion, everything I always fought for since the age of 5. And I said, yes, count me in. So I'm on the social media committee for that organization. I'm coming up with creative ideas for them. And I'm really excited about it.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
We'll get some links about that, because I know that that's something that people will be interested in and want to know more about. So we'll get some links in for that.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you, Elinor. Thank you. I'm so glad that we reconnected. I am thrilled that you were able to be on my show. I know that you're extremely busy still going and speaking and letting people know, and you're on this wonderful diversity group. This is the way an entrepreneur should be. I'm so glad that you overcame and pushed back against all of those people who poo-pooed you and dismissed you. This is a shining example of what happens when you don't listen to people and you do your thing.
Thank you. Yeah, my final advice is use the negativity to prove, just watch me. Yes, I can. Exactly. And go do it.
Go do it. Absolutely.
Thank you for having me as your guest, Sue. It's a treat to reconnect.
Yeah. And thank you to all of my viewers and listeners on the sweet sound of success. What are your dreams for your business? You know what drives me crazy? Really smart business owners denying their talents because they've been taught it has to be hard, because they've been taught that they don't deserve their gifts, that they're not worth anything. They've been taught that their gender means they can't express their genius. I'm Sue Wilhite, and I want you to have access to your genius. I want you to go out and rock the world with your genius. So I created the Call to Action coaching program. It's all about getting to the heart of you and what you've got to share with the world to make a profitable business that thrives and allows you to make a difference in the world. Click the link to sign up for the Call to Action coaching program today. Don't let your genius go unnoticed.